My wife and mother-in-law spent years planning to steal my fortune. She proposed the prenup to gain my trust. But when I discovered their legal fraud scheme, I turned the mother against her and left them with nothing. I'm 52 years old. I'm the CEO of a fintech company. And after what happened 2 years ago, I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone again. I know how that sounds, like the typical bitter rich guy who thinks all women just want his money, but literally every time I've let my guard down, they've proven I was right from the beginning. This story is about Rachel, my ex-wife, and how she and her mother put together a plan so elaborate to rob me that even now, when it's all over, I have a hard time believing someone could be that calculating. I guess I should start by explaining why I'm so distrustful. Because otherwise you're going to think I'm a paranoid for no reason. My first wife, Amanda, left me after 2 years of marriage and took an absurd amount of money in the divorce. We didn't have a prenuptial agreement because I was young, stupid, and believed in true love and all those things they sell you in the movies. After that, I became extremely careful with relationships. I basically assumed that any woman who approached me only saw my bank account. And honestly, I wasn't wrong very often. I dated some women here and there, nothing serious. And every time things started getting a little deeper, the topic of money always came up in one way or another. One asked me to buy her a car because hers was too old. Another needed help with her apartment rent. Another wanted me to pay for her brother's college. There was always something. You know what I mean? So I got to a point where I basically resigned myself to being alone, because the idea of going through the same thing as with Amanda terrified me, and then Rachel appeared. She worked at my company, in the marketing department. She'd been there for about 2 years when we started running into each other more often. She was 29 years old at that time. I was 50. And I'm not going to lie. She was attractive and always very professional with me. She was never one of those people who try to flirt with the boss or who are always trying to look good. She just did her work, and that was it. One day we coincided in the elevator after a late-night meeting. We started talking about a project and ended up going for coffee to continue the conversation. I don't know exactly how it happened, but that night we talked about everything except work, like about our lives, our families, stuff like that. She told me her father had died when she was a teenager, and that she lived with her mother, Patricia, in a small apartment. I liked her, honestly. She seemed very grounded and unpretentious. We started dating casually after that. I was still being super careful. I didn't want anyone in the office to know because I didn't want to deal with gossip or accusations of favoritism or harassment or whatever. Rachel was very discreet too. She never acted different with me at work, never asked me for anything, didn't even hint that she wanted me to buy her things or take her to expensive places. In fact, many times she paid her part when we went out. Which surprised me, because most of the women I'd dated before automatically assumed I was going to pay for everything. We dated like that for about 6 months, without labels, just getting to know each other, and everything was going well until gossip started at the office. I don't know how they found out, but suddenly everyone knew, or at least suspected that something was going on between Rachel and me. People started making comments. Some employees looked at me weird when Rachel and I coincided in meetings, and I could feel that the situation was becoming uncomfortable for everyone. One day Rachel came to my office after everyone left and told me, "Look, David, this can't go on like this anymore. Either we make this official and everyone knows we're together, or we end it because it's not fair to either of us." It seemed very mature of her, very direct, and we decided to make it official. She transferred to another department to avoid conflicts of interest, and we moved forward with the relationship without hiding anymore. About another year passed, and things were going incredibly well. Rachel never asked me for money, never hinted that she wanted expensive gifts, never acted like she was with me for my position or my money. I met her mother, Patricia, who was a very kind lady, a bit quiet but always polite with me. They lived in a pretty modest apartment on the outskirts of the city, and when I visited them, I realized they really didn't have much money, but they didn't seem resentful about it either, or try to take advantage of me. Rachel worked hard, her mother worked part-time at a store, and the two of them seemed content with their simple life. Then one day Rachel completely surprised me. We were having dinner at my house when she told me, "David, I want to marry you." Just like that, no beating around the bush. I froze, like literally with my fork in the air, because I wasn't expecting that at all. I asked her if she was sure, and she said yes, that we'd been together long enough and that she knew I was scared because of what had happened with Amanda, but that she wasn't like that. And then she said something that completely disarmed me. She said, "I know this is going to sound weird, but I think we should sign a prenuptial agreement." I just stared at her in disbelief, because what woman suggests that? Normally it's the men who have to fight to get them to agree to sign one, and here was Rachel volunteering. I asked her why, and she told me, "Because I know you're afraid I'm with you for your money. And I want you to know that's not the case. What you built is yours, and I have no right to it just because we get married." That broke down all the barriers I had built, you know? For the first time in years, I felt like someone really saw me and not my bank account. I told her, yes, that we would get married, and I contacted my attorney Thomas immediately to draft the prenup. Rachel signed it without even reading it. She told me, "I trust you and your lawyer. I don't need to review it." We literally got married a week later in a small ceremony with some close friends and obviously Patricia. My attorney Thomas was there too. He had helped me with Amanda's divorce and had always told me to be careful, not to trust so easily, but even he seemed impressed with Rachel and told me she seemed like a good woman. After the wedding, Patricia moved in with us. My house is big. It has like 5 bedrooms. So it wasn't a problem, and Rachel asked me if it was okay for her mother to live with us because she didn't want to leave her alone in that apartment now that she was moving in with me. I thought it was sweet that she cared so much about her mother. So I said yes, no problem. The 3 of us lived together for several months and everything was perfect, like really perfect. Rachel kept working, although no longer at my company because she quit after we got married to avoid any nepotism issues. Patricia helped. Around the house and cooked. I continued with my work, and on weekends we did things together like a family. It was the closest to domestic happiness I had felt in years, and I started thinking that I had finally found someone genuine, someone who really loved me for me. Then one day, Patricia came to talk to me. She told me she'd been looking for her own place because she didn't want to be a burden on us, that she had found a small house she liked but needed help with the bank loan. She explained that her credit history wasn't very good because she'd had financial problems after her husband died, and asked me if I could co-sign the loan documents. I told her, of course, no problem, that I'd be happy to help her. She gave me the papers. I signed them without reviewing them much because I trusted her, and that was that, or so I thought. About 2 weeks later, I was in my office reviewing some contracts when my attorney Thomas called me. His tone was strange, like urgent but also confused, and he told me, "I need you to come to my office right now. It's important." I asked him what was going on, but he just repeated that he had to see me in person. I went immediately, obviously worried, and when I arrived, Thomas had a face I'd never seen on him. He told me, "David, did you sign some documents recently related to a house loan?" I told him yes, that I had co-signed for my mother-in-law. And he put the papers on his desk and told me, "I need you to look at this very carefully." We started reviewing the documents together, and there it was, hidden among a bunch of legal language and complicated clauses, a section that basically reversed the prenuptial agreement. I don't know exactly how they did it, like I'm not a lawyer and the wording was super confusing on purpose. But it basically said that by co-signing that loan, I was agreeing that any property acquired during the marriage, including the house Patricia was buying, would be considered shared marital property, and that this invalidated the protections of the prenup. Thomas explained to me that it was a super convoluted tactic and probably illegal, but that if I hadn't realized it and a few more months had passed, in a divorce, Rachel could have argued that the prenup was invalid because I had voluntarily agreed to change the terms. I sat there processing what I had just heard and literally felt like the floor was moving beneath me. I couldn't breathe well. My hands were sweating, and all I thought was that it had happened again. That once again I had trusted and once again I had been betrayed, but this time in such an elaborate and cruel way that I had a hard time accepting it was real. Thomas asked me what I wanted to do, and I told him I needed time to think, that I couldn't make any decisions at that moment because I felt like I was going to vomit or faint or both. I got home that night and Rachel and Patricia were there, having dinner and laughing about something in the kitchen, acting like everything was normal, like they hadn't just tried to steal my entire life with a signature hidden in legal documents. I looked at both of them, and I think something in my face alerted them, because Patricia stopped laughing and Rachel asked me if I was okay. I didn't say anything. Went up to my room, packed a suitcase with Rachel's things and another with Patricia's, went downstairs and put them at the front door. Rachel kept asking me what was wrong, to explain, and I just told her, "You have 10 minutes to get out of my house or I'm calling the police." Patricia started to say something, but I interrupted her and told her to shut up. That I knew exactly what they had tried to do, and that if they didn't leave immediately, I was going to have them arrested for fraud. Rachel started crying, saying she didn't know what I was talking about, to please explain, but I couldn't even look at her anymore. Patricia tried to approach me, and I yelled at her not to touch me, that she disgusted me, and I think that's when they finally understood that I knew everything. They left that night, like I literally kicked them out of my house with their suitcases and nothing else, and blocked their numbers immediately. During the following months, I ignored all their attempts to contact me, blocked their emails, their calls, told my employees that if either of them showed up at my office to call security. Thomas started the divorce proceedings immediately. I was devastated but also furious, like a mix of emotions I had never felt before, because with Amanda, it had been different. With her, it had simply been a disappointment. But with Rachel, it was pure betrayal. It was knowing that everything had been a lie from the beginning, that every tender moment, every deep conversation, every time she had told me she loved me, had been part of a plan to rob me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat well. I spent my time working 16 hours a day just to not have to think about what had happened. About 4 months passed, and Rachel kept refusing to sign the divorce papers. My lawyer explained that legally she couldn't stop it forever, but that she was using every possible tactic to prolong the process. One day, Thomas called me and told me that Rachel had set a condition, that she would only sign the papers if I met with her in person once. I told him no way, that I didn't want to see her ever again, but Thomas explained that if I didn't accept this, the divorce was going to take months or even years more, and that it was better to end everything at once. I reluctantly agreed, set as a condition that it be in a public place with Thomas present, and she accepted. We met at a restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon. Rachel arrived and looked terrible, like she had lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes, looked like she hadn't slept in days. She sat across from me, and Thomas was at my side, taking notes of everything. Rachel immediately started crying and told me, "David, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain." I didn't say anything, just looked at her, waiting for her to speak. She told me that everything had been her mother's idea, that Patricia had convinced her it was the only way to secure her future, that they had been poor for years. And when Rachel started dating me, her mother told her she couldn't waste that opportunity. She explained that her mother had contacted an unscrupulous lawyer who had suggested the prenup plan and then the house loan with the hidden clause. Rachel swore to me that she really loved me, that everything we had lived together had been real for her, but that she was so afraid of being poor again that she had accepted her mother's plan. She told me she regretted it every day, that she couldn't live with the guilt, and begged me to forgive her. I let her talk without interrupting, and when she finished, I asked her if she really expected me to believe anything after everything she had done. She started crying harder and told me she understood. I didn't trust her, but please, not to leave her with nothing, that she needed money to survive. That's when she showed her true face again. She told me that if I didn't give her $1 million, she was going to go to the media and say I had cheated on her during our marriage, that she was going to ruin my reputation and my company's, with false accusations of infidelity and abuse. And then she added, "Or you can just stay married to me and forget about all this. I can be a good wife to you, David. I can make this work." It was pure blackmail, like without any kind of subtlety or shame. And I just sat there looking at her, thinking about how I hadn't seen this part of her before, how I had been so blind. I told her I wasn't going to give her a cent, and that if she tried anything in the media, I was going to sue her for defamation until I destroyed her financially. She went pale and started saying she wasn't playing, that she would do it, but I was already getting up from the table. Thomas and I left, and she stayed there, sitting, crying. And honestly, I didn't feel even a bit of pity for her. Thomas suggested something that at first seemed crazy, but ended up being brilliant. He told me we should try talking to Patricia, that maybe she would be willing to cooperate if we offered her something in return. I didn't want to have anything to do with either of them, but Thomas convinced me it was the best strategy to end this quickly. We contacted Patricia and proposed meeting with her, She accepted surprisingly quickly. We met at Thomas's office, and Patricia arrived alone. She looked nervous, but also had that calculating expression I now recognized perfectly. Thomas explained the situation to her, told her that Rachel was trying to extort me, and that if Patricia helped us with information about how they had planned everything from the beginning, I would be willing to give her the house I had co-signed, plus some money to move away and never contact us again. Patricia thought about it for like 2 minutes and then started talking. She told me everything. Turns out Rachel had started the rumors at the office on purpose, had manipulated the situation so I would feel like I had to make the relationship official or end it. I knew that I would choose to make it official because I was already emotionally invested in her. The marriage proposal, the prenup suggestion, everything had been calculated with her mother and that corrupt lawyer who had given them the ideas. Patricia coldly explained to me that they had researched me, that they knew about my divorce from Amanda and my trust issues, and that they had used that against me, making me believe Rachel was different, when in reality, she was worse, because everything had been premeditated from the start. What hurt me most was when Patricia told me that Rachel really did have affection for me, that not everything had been an act, but that at the end of the day money mattered more than any real feelings she might have had for me. She explained that when Rachel realized I had discovered the fraud, she had had a crisis because part of her really didn't want to lose me, but that her mother had convinced her to try to get something out of the divorce anyway because they had nothing to lose. Patricia signed a sworn statement admitting the entire plan, including the name of the lawyer who had advised them and all the details of how they had hidden the clause in the loan documents. With that information, Thomas prepared a solid case. Plus, he contacted like 20 employees from my company who were willing to testify about how Rachel had manipulated the situation at the office, how she had intentionally started the rumors, and how she had acted strategically to get a relationship with me. We had emails, text messages, a whole pattern of behavior that showed it had been premeditated. The day of the final hearing arrived, and Rachel showed up with a lawyer who clearly wasn't very good, probably all she could afford. Thomas presented all the evidence, Patricia's statement, employee testimonies, the loan fraud documents, everything. He explained to Rachel and her lawyer that if she didn't sign the divorce immediately without receiving anything, I was going to press criminal charges for fraud, document forgery, and several other crimes that could send her to prison for years. He specifically showed her the signed statement from her own mother, detailing the entire plan and admitting her participation. Rachel completely fell apart right there in the courtroom. She started crying, saying her mother had betrayed her. How was it possible that Patricia had talked, and her lawyer told her that basically she had no possible defense? It took her like an hour of crying and denial, but she finally signed the divorce papers without receiving absolutely anything, not a cent. The judge validated the agreement on the spot, and I walked out of there, officially divorced and with my assets completely protected. I fulfilled my part of the deal with Patricia, gave her the house and a sum of money on the condition that she moved to another state and never try to contact me again. She accepted without problem and left like 2 weeks later. I found out later through Thomas that Rachel and her mother eventually reconciled and now live together again somewhere far from here. I guess in the end, blood is thicker than money or something like that. That was like 2 years ago now. I'm completely alone now. I don't even try to date anyone or meet new people because honestly, I don't have any trust left to give. My therapist, yeah, I started therapy after all this, tells me that eventually I'll be able to trust someone again. But I don't know if I believe him. Every time someone is kind to me, I wonder what they really want. Every time a woman shows interest, I automatically assume she researched how much money I have. I know it sounds paranoid and bitter, and I probably am, but after Amanda and after Rachel, I don't know what else to expect from people. I keep working. My company is doing well. I have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life, but everything feels empty and meaningless now. Sometimes I think Rachel won anyway, because even though she didn't take my money, she did take my ability to be happy. You know what I mean? She left me so damaged that she basically ensured me a life of solitude and distrust, and that's worse than any financial loss.